I'm pleased to kick off the afternoon sessions with Ben Harmon, who's a student at the California Maritime Academy. He's been studying as an intern with the Seasteading Institute the application of maritime security to seasteads, and he's going to talk about Seastead Security. Everyone, please welcome Ben.
Thank you, Patri. Thank you, everyone. As Patri said, my name is Ben Harmon. I am a senior at the California Maritime Academy studying maritime security. I did a white paper researching Seasteading Security and how pre-existing security measures can be applied to seasteads. I focused mainly on the beginning steps, the shipsteads. So, without further ado. Okay, so just a brief outline of what my presentation will be on. Of course, when anyone says they're specialized in maritime security, everyone asks about the pirates. So, piracy will be first and foremost. And then I'm going to move into the bulk of my research was into pre-existing security resources and how they can be applied to seasteading. My main focus was in non-lethal deterrence. And then I have a section about commercial resources where I specifically talk about companies and practices that are already existing and they're already in the marketplace and they can be kind of put directly into a shipstead. And then my last little bit will be about avoiding the police state because it's a security presentation, but I know the whole point of seasteading is to kind of liberate yourself and the inhabitants from the current way of government and how things are run. So obviously you need to be safe, but you don't want to have cameras and armed guards everywhere. All right, so piracy. I'm sure this is what comes to your mind when anyone says piracy. You have the Somalian pirates with guns and RPGs pointed right at you. Hopefully that will not be happening at any seastead. So the argument and logic behind piracy and seasteading is that as long as you're out of the danger zones, which are outlined in the red, there's about 3 major zones, that you're basically all right because that they don't stray far from those zones and there's no news of piracy off the Pacific Northwest or anything like that. Also, seasteads will not be holding any precious cargo that anyone would want to go after. There's no Ocean 11 heist going on at Shipstead. It's not full of diamonds or full of any expensive commodity. But just in case, security people are we're not pessimists, but we think of the worst case scenario, and so we come up with resources to deal with these worst case scenarios. So these are just kind of the main points that I'll be talking about in the next part. I'll be talking about LRADs, which are long-range acoustic devices. They're also called sound cannons. High-pressure hoses, which can be used aboard any maritime platform or ship because you're just hooked into the water and you just run it through a hose. Utilizing deck watches and how those can be tweaked and used to a more perfect solution. And then Citadel Rooms, which are a kind of the last thing you do if there is a kind of successful attack or intrusion. And just more high walls and razor wires and entanglement ropes are just current practices used by ships that transit through hot areas like Somalia. All right, so LRAD, the long-range acoustic device, it works by amplifying and directing sound towards a targeted area it can be used as first as a hailing and warning system. It can amplify a message of, you're coming into our area, stay away, you're not announced. And after that, it can be amplified to what they call the threshold of irritation. They put it in a nice way, but basically it's after that point it starts causing pain and disorientation. So it's employed on land and sea, and it's been very successful in deterring threats, specifically in the hot zones of piracy that our vital oil trade is going through. Okay, next we have the deterrent of high pressure hoses. They are very simple. It's literally basically a fire hose hooked up to the water system, and it's used to push away any attackers, and it's easily adapted to any shipstead or any ocean platform, and if need be or wanted, it can be pressurized enough to cause pain, but hopefully that won't be necessary. And as an added deterrent, it can be hooked up to a heating system so that the water used will be hot to the touch. Next is the deck watches, and this has been something that's been key in piracy deterrence, is just the fact of having hands on deck, keeping an eye out. It was before piracy kind of became mainstream and on everyone's radar, things would just disappear off of cargo ships. They'd open a container and it would be empty because no one was paying attention, and a group of pirates boarded the ship and took all the cargo out. So watches, it kind of is a duh thing, but it's extra manpower, so that's why it was not employed a few years ago. So just having someone at the front of the ship, the back of the ship, and someone just kind of roaming around the ship paying attention, because in this kind of situation, nothing beats human intuition. If you think that ship in the dark coming up near you is not a fishing ship, it's probably not. So just being alert and paying attention and staying in communication with the rest of your ship is really a key thing. Okay, Citadel Rooms are kind of the final fallback. Like the citadel of a castle, it's where they would go as a last resort. It's a purpose-built safe room, so it's impervious to attacks, it's bulletproof, and like RPG proof, since a lot of pirates have escalated to using stronger weapons. There was actually a news article from last year, I believe, about a crew that had gotten safely into their Citadel room, and the pirates in frustration fired an RPG at it, and it bounced off of the Citadel room door and blew up and injured 3 of the pirates. So it works as long as it's constructed correctly. It works. And the main things about the Citadel room is that it must have food and water rations, and it must have communication to the outside so that when the responders arrive, they can communicate with the crew and figure out what steps to take from there. So the Citadel room is becoming more and more commonplace in ships that are transiting any great distance. Okay, the Seaboard Spirit. This is kind of a little bit of a case study. It's a cruise ship, and it's kind of a non-lethal deterrent success story. At 5:50 in the morning on November 5th, 2005, the 439-foot Seaboard Spirit with 115 passengers aboard was attacked by 2 pirate speedboats. They opened fire with heavy machine guns and RPGs. That picture is actually an RPG round lodged in the hull of the ship. So the master-at-arms of the ship responded with high-pressure water hoses and was able to push the attackers away and then use the ship's LRAD system, the sound cannon, to blast them with the sound waves, and the pirates were successfully fended off, and the ship was able to continue on to the Seychelles, minus the RPG round, which was removed by a U.S. Navy ship that responded. So obviously these non-lethal deterrents work. You don't need guns to keep yourself safe. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next part of my presentation, which is existing commercial resources that can be applied and integrated into seasteading. The first company I found was Radio Zealand DMP Americas. They offer what they call a maritime early detection system. It's a full security system that they market for oil rigs, so it could be used on a ocean platform-based seastead. And next I move into private security companies that specialize in maritime operations. They offer security guards trained in these non-lethal deterrents, and they also offer training so that you don't have to have all these guards from some company supposedly protecting you. They can train your own people, and then from there you can kind of create your own security system if that's what that particular seastead would like. And then finally, screening technology, focusing on what cruise ship companies are currently using, because a cruise ship I figured was kind of the closest thing to a shipstead. So I looked at their security measures and kind of went from there. All right, so the Radio Zealand DMP Americas is their maritime early detection system, or referred to as MEDS also. It's a fully commercial system that can be integrated into any purpose, basically. It's a system that they have and they market, and the picture is just kind of showing how they have an area, a 360-degree area around it that is a fully secure area. So the way this maritime early detection system works is it works through a combination of infrared cameras for day and nighttime operation, and in conjunction with that it employs sonar, radar, and kind of trip sensors. So what it does is, the whole purpose of this technology and system is to pick up an intruder or an unexpected vessel showing up early enough that measures can be taken to kind of deal with this potential threat. It provides, once it picks up this intruder, it provides the bearing and the speed of the target, so it'll give you an estimated time of arrival for whatever vessel. And that can also be tweaked, it can be changed, the settings can just be switched over to also pick up natural events and weather. So it can also be used to pick up like a once in 100 years hurricane or something that's appearing before, you know, the weather satellite or whatever on land contacts you. So it can also be tweaked to keep the seastead secure from freak natural phenomenon. And as I said, it's a fully integrated security system, so it could be routed through just one office. So maybe there's even like a separate smaller seastead from the main seastead that just kind of deals with all the security stuff, so there's not tons of security things going on in the seastead. Next, I selected 3 of the most well-known security companies that provide guards trained in non-lethal measures, and they also provide training so that their guards aren't necessary. And if a seastead so desires, some of the companies do provide armed guards. Okay, so the Maritime and Underwater Security Consultants. They've been in the business for 38 years. Their main marketing is in consulting and training, so they only have a small section of actual guards, but their main thing is they will look at your shipstead or your seastead or the oil platform that you'll be using and kind of give you an idea of how it can be secured, and then from there they can offer the training needed to your people on how to secure it. And this company was invited by the International Maritime Organization to provide information and insight for the International Ship and Port Security Code, which became international law in the IMO. So they know their stuff and they've been doing it for a long time. Okay, the next company is Secure West International. They have 25 years of experience. This company is more focused on providing actual security guards. So maybe for the starting shipstead, if they wanted a few trained and professional guards, this would be the company to go with. They also offer something that they call security architecture. It seems to be along the same lines of the Maritime Early Detection System. So it's some kind of security system and detection, but due to competition, they don't really disclose much about it. And they also offer training, and they have the International Maritime Organization certified training for $75 per course, and it's 4 courses to be completely certified. So you can get a bit of a price range to have a certified trained security individual. Okay, and then Bowlin Defense, their main thing is guards. They offer unarmed and armed guards. And they also have specific offshore platform security plans and training in place, which I felt was very important for seasteads because I feel and I've heard that that's kind of one of the mainstays of seasteads is basing off of an offshore platform. So this company has specific training and plans for offshore platforms. Okay, and then finally the screening technology and cruise line practices. The first thing that cruise line companies do to protect themselves and their passengers is screening. They get the list of passengers and they run it against kind of like international security databases and make sure that these people have, they're not going to be having some drug lord on their ship or anything like that. And that's really an important step, is just a simple screening and making sure that these people aren't wanted anywhere for anything horrible. And then they also have metal detectors that you go through. And obviously this can be tailored to the kind of rules and laws and governing of each seastead. If the seastead allows weapons, or if they don't, that can be used to detect those before they get onto the seastead, or allow them on and keep something else off. And then the final point was controlled entry and exit points. This was something that I spent a lot of time on in my paper, actually, was the fact that if there's a lot of ways for people to get on and off of a seastead or a shipstead, then there's a lot of ways for someone unwanted to get on and then off of the seastead. So, one or two entry and exit ways that are continually monitored and controlled makes for a much more secure area, whether it be on a shipstead or an offshore platform. Okay, and then avoiding the police state. Obviously, we don't want anything like cameras watching everything the inhabitants do or anything like that. So I came up with a few simple ways. Obviously, if cameras are necessary, and I would say that they are just to detect incoming ships, have them only looking out at the sea and not pointing at the inward into the seastead. You probably can't even notice, but at the top of the mast is a little bubble camera. So having something like that just on the outside of the seastead to keep an eye on, the traffic flow heading towards the seastead would keep it protected, but not have the people feel like they're being watched all the time, because seasteads are a lot about freedom. And obviously don't have the security guards walking around with guns or anything like that. And if possible, have the guards actual citizens of the seasteads have an investment into the seastead, so they're protecting their own family maybe. So it could be something like that. Just get them trained by the companies so that they pass like international laws and things like that. And then have the security run from a central office so that there's not tons of like police stations and police cars or whatever it would be on the seastead. Just have it so people feel comfortable, but that they are still safe. That's the compromise in the line that security people try to keep in mind all the time is we don't want to compromise security, but we don't want to make people feel like they're the ones being penalized for security. And that was my research.
Given that most of the piracy is performed by untrained people using small arms,
Yes.
I wonder if the industry has evolved. I wonder if the industry has evolved to the point where it's managed to mitigate the issue over the course of the last 3 years, and if not, why not?
The industry has evolved quite a bit in responding to piracy with arms. And what's happened is it's a lot of the non-lethal deterrents are employed against an aggressor. It hasn't been mitigated completely. Piracy is at its root a crime of opportunity. So as long as there's big ships sailing by Somalia, there's going to be attempts at it, but the attempts are becoming less and less successful. So it's happening less and less.
And from the industry, has most of the response been in non-lethal arms, or is that just what you're suggesting?
That's what I'm suggesting, and it also has been what the industry has been geared at. There's been a long-standing debate about whether ships should be armed or whether they shouldn't. The main thing about arming ships is the problem of escalation. So if the merchant ships arm themselves, then the pirates will arm themselves better. So it has been more geared towards non-lethal responses. Yes, sir.
Yes. But you see, the problem is perhaps growing as well, because say in Costa Rica, self-called the happiest country in the world, we call them the pirates of the Pacific, because they are robbers. Okay?
Uh-huh.
They're not like pirates, but these guys are at night going around, and anything that goes by, even if it's a small fishing vessel, or because also they connect with the drug smuggling that comes from the south through Central America. So there is danger, like growing beyond the map you have. Perhaps
Right.
Perhaps it's not as serious, of course, as it happens in Somalia, but it's certainly growing.
Right. Yeah, the thing about the seasteading and security like that is just location. If they stay away from hot zones, they'll hopefully be okay, but that's also why there are these security measures to take, because if they are located in the Pacific, and a lot of crimes like this are just opportunity, or there's been growing investigation into kind of criminal operation on using the maritime domain as a way of extending criminal operations. I know my professor at my school is researching into that right now. So it is a valid point that needs to be taken into concern, but hopefully the shipsteads and the seasteads can just mainly avoid those problem areas and secure themselves well enough that it's not a big problem.
What is the comparable range and accuracy of the LRAD and the hoses to machine guns and RPGs?
The LRAD, I believe, has an operating range of something like 400 meters, so it has a pretty good range. It's pretty comparable to small arms. That's why the Seaboard Spirit, they were shooting at the ship, but the Master at Arms was able to fend them off with the LRAD. And the hoses, they do need to be much closer for them to be useful, so it is more of an anti-boarding measure.
I have to object to your statement that pirates are most. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if it is if it's a correct statement that pirates would be only after the cargo. Now, the most valuable thing they can snatch is the person of a high value, high worth. If you can kidnap Bill Gates' family, it's worth probably more than a few cargo ships. And it is much more difficult to protect small vessels like sailing vessels, which can carry people of very substantial worth. Now, I would like to understand better, why is the industry leaning away from the lethal weapons? The fact that the Seabourn, the successful story of Seabourn, I don't feel it was a great success story. Yes, they escaped, but the pirates were left there. Maybe a few hours later they could attack some other boat that was not so well prepared. For me, the optimal situation would be either apprehend them or kill them. I'm sorry, but that would be one less problem to worry about. Every security guard in the bank carries a gun. Why can't do the same for the ships?
Right. The whole thing about the trying not to arm the vessels is they're worried about escalation. So, but I know that many countries have authorized their vessels to start carrying arms, and the Maersk shipping line actually, when they're transiting hot zones like Somalia, they do pick up a small team that's trained in using weapons, and perhaps that could be something that seasteads could have. They could have a small team trained in weaponry and have the weapons, usually not in use, but if a pirate or something does come, they can use it against them. So I do know that it does happen, and the industry does have people that use weapons. All right, and I think I've been signaled to bring it to an end, so do we have time for one more question? No? Okay, well, I'll find you after the presentation, sir. Thank you.